All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Healedish, and I am so excited today because we are going to be talking about something called the world race that I'm sure that a lot of people are familiar with if you were in the missions world. So I have Toni on today, and she actually did do the world race. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I actually almost did this program. Let's see. I don't think I talked about it in my beginning episodes, but I almost signed up for the world race before I ended up meeting my ex.
Cool.
And it was funny. I actually prayed to God and was like, if I don't meet somebody soon, I'm going to go do the world race by myself. So if you haven't heard about it, it is this missions program where you go for, I believe, 11 months and you go to a lot of different countries. So how many countries did you? 11 countries in 11 months. So I, in this prayer to God, I knew that if I did the world race, I would have to fundraise for it in advance and that I would be overseas for that amount of time. And I was really wanting to get married because that's such the focus at a lot of these ministry schools. So I kind of told God, if I don't meet someone soon, I'm going to go do it. Did end up meeting my ex a couple months later, unfortunately. But I was hoping that we could just get started by you talking about what type of religious system you were raised in.
Yeah, so I was raised Southern Baptist, so very, very strict conservative, lots of rules-based. My family started going to church when I was about third grade. We were invited to this program called Awana. It's a worldwide program, but it is super big in the South. I grew up in North Carolina.
I feel like I've heard of it.
Yeah, so Awana is a program where kids, they learn, like they memorize the Bible, they do Bible studies, games, like all these things. You can actually travel as a high schooler to national competitions for like Bible quiz and Olympic games is what they call them. And so I was heavily involved in that from third grade until I graduated high school. We had a family who invited us to it. And then my parents started coming to church shortly thereafter. So I was very heavily involved. I was very much a church kid. Everybody knew me as the kid who went to church, followed the rules. I was the kid who walked around with my Bible underneath my arm, like, look at me, I'm such a good Christian. Because that was like the thing to do. You just carry around your Bible everywhere.
Yeah, that program was very strict. It's funny, you totally jogged a memory that I completely forgot about, but I have this distant memory of being invited to a friend's church, and I think that they did that program, and the time that I went, they were trying to have us memorize Bible verses, and they said, when you come back next week, you need to have all of these done, and I remember I went home to my mom, and I was like, I don't think I want to go to that friend's church anymore. It was pretty intense.
It was very, rewards based too. So they have classes for each kind of age group. And so when I started in third grade, the names have changed now, I think. But when I was a kid in third and fourth grade, they called it Chums. I don't know why it was called Chums, but so you had a book that you had to go through every year. And so the idea was you start at the beginning of the school year or the beginning of Awana, and every week you have a lesson that you go through and you have certain Bible verses that you're supposed to memorize. You come back the next week, you recite these Bible verses to your class leaders, and then we had vests that we wore for each age group you were in. And so in Chums, we had this, it was like a tan vest, and you had these jewels and like little things that they would give you. And so you'd wear them on your vest. And then the more you memorized and the more you passed, the more jewels you got. And then at the end of the year, they would have a big celebration for all the people or all the kids who had completed the books. And then the really awesome perk was that if you completed the books, once you hit sixth grade, you got to go to a Awana camp in the summer. And that was the thing you wanted to do. You were such a cool kid if you got through the school year and you earned the trip for a week to go to a Awana camp. And that was
what was the Awana camp? What did they do there?
It was literally just your typical summer camp, like what you would imagine a Christian summer camp would look like. It was a week of games and food and sermons in the morning and the evening and worship and all of the things. And then obviously at the end of the week, they would have this big call to salvation. And I went every year from, I think, 6th grade to 12th grade. I did the books every year and earned a spot every year to go.
Wow. So did you enjoy it at the time, or do you feel like there was any part of you that felt pressure to really nail down these Bible verses and all of that?
So I think mostly I enjoyed it. There was a little bit of pressure because I was kind of known as like the goody two-shoes. Like I was the kid who did all the things. And so if there was ever a week I went to Awana and I hadn't memorized a verse, it was like, Toni, what's going on? What are you, like, are you okay? And so I loved it mostly because Awana, like when I was a kid, church was my escape. I had a very abusive family, like very traumatic childhood. And so like Wednesday night was like my time that I could get away and be away from my family, and my sister too. And like that week at summer, like I worked my tail off all school year long so that I could escape for a week in the summer. And so, yeah, I did everything I could to make sure that I was going to be at Awana camp for that week in June every year.
Did you have to pay for the camp, or did your parents have to pay for it?
So my family was dirt poor. So our church had scholarships for kids whose parents couldn't afford it. So my church paid for me every year. But yeah, you did in some way have to pay.
Cool. Yeah. I think looking back to my time in youth group, there was definitely a lot of not great things going on there, but there was a sense of an escape. You know, I was really bullied in high school. So, I mean, there are happy memories with getting a chance to get out and just connect with people who are mostly really nice for the most part, like the other kids.
Yes, the kids were awesome. The church itself, growing up, I didn't realize now that I'm like very far removed from that, very controlling. You know, they preached the gospel like Jesus came to earth to save you from your sins. He died on the cross. He rose on the third day. And if you believe, like accept him into your heart, you're going to be saved and you're going to die and go to heaven one day. But it was also very like, if you do this, you're going to go to hell. If you do this, you're going to go to hell. And so I was terrified as a kid to do anything that I thought was going to allow me to lose my salvation, even though they preached eternal security. And then like I'm eternally secure because I accepted Jesus into my heart at Awana camp when I was 13. But if I do this, I'm going to go to hell. And so it didn't quite make sense to me, but I'm going to follow the rules. I'm just, whatever, you guys know the Bible, I don't, I'm going to believe you. And so, it was as an adult who moved far away from that as soon as I could, I'm like, you guys don't make any sense in what you were teaching.
Yeah, so they were preaching that your salvation can be revoked.
I mean, they never said that.
Like, or they're saying it without saying it. Because they're saying all of these sins that will get you to hell. But also it can never be taken away.
Right. And so I remember thinking in my head as a kid, like, wait, so Jesus loves me no matter what. I said yes, he's in my heart. But if I cuss, I'm going to go to hell? Like, so
if you cuss?
Like, wow. Oh my gosh, yes. So, I mean, you, like, saying dang was a swear word. Like, you could not. Pseudo swear words, not allowed. We weren't allowed to dance, and so, like, no dancing. So we got reprimanded when we were in high school and went to prom. Like, I mean, everything. So
was there no dancing during worship? Because really, that's so interesting. Because I was like non-denominational evangelical, and you know, we had the dance moves, Our Father's House, you know, and those sorts of songs.
So yeah, there was never. So I was in a like no contemporary worship. It was all hymns. And so, you know, we would be in the congregation. We'd have somebody up on stage, like no guitars, no drums, only the piano or the organ. Sometimes both. And we would open our hymnals and we'd be singing the songs, and that was it. Like we didn't even sway. Like there was just, you stand there kind of like stoic. I very, very rarely were people kind of raising their hands in worship, but it was very much you stand here, you sing your songs, that's it.
Wow. And I mean, people are going to see it the more we get into, but that was not your experience at the World Race.
Complete opposite in every way.
Complete opposite. Wow, that's crazy. At my church, we had the hands go up every once in a while if you're really feeling radical at the time, but yeah, that's so interesting that it's really just the piano, right? You said the piano or the organ.
Or the organ.
And
Yeah.
yeah. My grandma's Methodist church was like that. And it was sweet. It was sweet. I enjoyed going to that one more so than some of the other churches. But
I mean, honestly,
was purity culture?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. You can go.
No. I was going to say, honestly, even now, I still enjoy hymns. Like, I feel like even with all the, like, stuff I dealt with in childhood, there's something to me so calming and peaceful. And so I still, like, if there are certain ones, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't listen to this. But overall, I feel like they're just, I don't know. And so maybe that's why they were so stuck on it. But, yeah.
No, I get that. My husband, he loves hymns, and he wasn't raised super religious. He was raised Catholic. But when my grandma passed away a few years ago, we would go over to her house and we would sing hymns for her because she was a pastor's wife. And a lot of those songs she loved, so we really grew up on the standard hymns too. And I like that more than worship music. I get really triggered by worship music because it just like Bethel, but I don't really get triggered by hymns, they're kind of sweet in a way. So I get that.
And very much more so about God than us. Like worship music is very much about us, I feel like. So
how I am experiencing God and about me and how he shows up in my life. And I remember being in youth group, I remembered thinking that I was worshiping and I was feeling really into it. And then I realized this song is about how I'm suffering and I need him to help me. And it reminded me of, that's not that different than some of the secular music that I listen to that's about depression, because it was just me crying out for help a lot of the time. And that's when I felt most connected to God, was during those sorts of songs.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So what was purity culture like being raised in that sector?
I mean, very much what you would think. It was the 90s. It was the South. Pretty much any podcast that you've recorded before this one, it's the same. So we did True Love Waits. We read all the books. We went to conferences. I was actually just talking to one of my childhood friends a couple of days ago who experienced a lot of the same things I did. And we were talking about this. And I asked her, we went to the same elementary school and then she moved away, but we stayed in touch. And I asked her, like, did you guys do the whole ring thing? And she was like, oh yeah, we had like it was like a wedding band almost, but it's like, and it said True Love Waits on it. And I was like, oh, did you guys do the engagement ring? And she was like, what? So I remember we went to this conference. I was probably 15. I had just started dating a boy in the youth group, and we went to this conference, and they were, all the normal, like, save yourself for marriage, because if you don't, all the normal things. And they were talking about how, like, you should have a ring that signifies that you are committed to God until you find your spouse. And it wasn't just toward women, or it wasn't just toward the girls, it was for the boys too. Like, you should wear a ring that says, like, I'm taken until you are taken. And then I remember they broke apart, and so the boys went to one place and the girls went to another, and they were talking to us about, like, okay, when you start dating a guy and you want to make sure that you're pursuing marriage and that he's honoring your body and that you're not tempting him. It was all about, like, what we're doing to tempt them. And then they were like,
of course. And
then eventually you decide, you decide that you want to get married, and the man's going to propose to you and give you an engagement ring. And so they were like, so I'm 15. Like, there are girls younger than me. There are girls older than me, but, like, we're all teenage girls. And they're like, so what we want to encourage you to do is to go get an engagement ring and wear it to show that you are committed to God, almost like you're engaged to God, but they didn't use that phrasing, but like you're committed to God until you find your husband. And so I literally went to, like, Walmart or Kmart or whatever, went to, like, the fake jewelry engagement ring section and found this ridiculous engagement ring and wore it. And so I'm walking around high school. I'm like 10th grade with this ring on my hand, like I'm engaged. And people would ask me and I'd be like, oh no, this is my purity ring. Like, I'm saving myself for my husband for marriage. And And looking back, I'm like, what in the actual world? Like, who approved
No, that's
this?
so crazy.
Why? I cannot.
Especially that it looked like an engagement ring.
Oh,
That is
like
so
literally,
good.
it was like a marquee cut. Like, I mean, this huge gaudy thing. It wasn't even in any world realistic. Like, I
Oh
probably
my
found
gosh.
the biggest one I could, and it was so dumb. Oh my gosh.
Meanwhile, people at your school are probably like, "Oh my gosh, you're engaged? You're 15 years
Right.
old."
Yeah. Like, oh my, and like most people knew I had a boyfriend and who was a year younger than me. So he was 14. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, why?
No, it was so
insane.
common. We didn't do that. We didn't do the engagement rings. That's crazy. I've heard a lot of the purity rings, but not necessarily like
Yeah.
I mean, they're not saying it, but they are that you are essentially
Right.
engaged to God up until then. And I
Yeah.
remember, I had a few purity rings. I would throw them out whenever I sinned and I felt like I was bad. I just
Yeah.
remember whenever I would go buy a new one, I just had so much hope that like, this time I'm going to be perfect. This time I'm going to live up to all of the things that I should be doing, and not be lukewarm,
Right.
because that was the biggest thing. Did you
Yep,
hear that
yep.
verse a lot growing
He'll
up?
spit
Yeah.
you. Oh, yes. Like if you're lukewarm, he will spit you out of his mouth. He would rather you be hot or cold. Yes, all the time.
I actually just unironically just saw a TikTok video of that like an hour before we recorded. And this
my
girl
gosh.
was saying, she was being so serious that there are no such things as lukewarm Christians. You either are or you aren't. So she was even saying people aren't saved if they're lukewarm. So man, that video would have done a number on me in high school.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I'd be like,
I'm like, it's
I'm
me.
definitely going to hell for sure. Oh, man.
Well, it sounds like you were doing all the right things though.
All the right
It
things.
sounds like
yeah.
you were,
But
yeah.
it wasn't out of like love or reverence for God. It was legitimately out of, I'm going to be punished by God in life, and or I'm going to die and burn in hell even though I love Jesus, and or I'm going to get in trouble at home. And so it was 100% based on fear that I walked that fine line. Like I obeyed all the rules because I was so afraid of getting in trouble.
Oh, that's so real. How do you think that
It was,
viewed
yeah.
your, how do you think that like changed your view of God? Did you still feel like he
So-
was a warm and caring presence, or were you kind of split on if he was kind of scary?
I didn't feel like he was scary. I felt like, so like I said, I grew up in an abusive home. My dad, out of love, when we would do something wrong, would, in his words, spank us, but it wasn't spanking, it was abuse. And so I kind of viewed it, and like as a kid, I didn't know any different. And so I thought that it was normal. And so I kind of viewed it as like, well, this is a father who, when their child does something wrong, they receive consequences. So I never viewed it as like, I'm scared of him. And I think it was because I didn't like physically see or feel any sort of punishment. I think it was more of the idea of if I do something wrong, something in my life is going to happen and that will be my punishment. And there was a long time after I moved away, and I looked back at everything I experienced in childhood before I really even realized the true magnitude of the trauma I experienced, where I was like, oh, well, maybe this happened and this happened and this happened because I did this, and that was God's way of like disciplining me. And so I was like trying to justify the bad I experienced as a kid because by saying, oh, it was because I did something wrong.
Yeah. You're telling yourself that you deserved it at the time to like
Yes,
try to
yeah.
make sense of all of that. Do you think that
Right.
your parents knew that they were crossing a line? Or do you think that they felt justified in the way they acted?
Well, so I haven't spoken to my dad in 10 years, but 10 years ago, one of the last conversations I had with him, he was still in denial. And so I wouldn't know now, but 10 years ago, he was still saying, oh, no, you were just a bad kid and I was just disciplining you. My
Yeah,
mom
it
never
doesn't
physically...
sound like you were a bad kid.
Right.
Not that any child deserves abuse, even if they were acting out, but yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. And I remember telling people like in my late teens, early 20s, honestly, even as late as like late 20s, early 30s, that I was a bad kid. And that's why I always got in trouble. And because it has taken me, Jubilee, I am 38 years old, and it has just been in the last 5 years that I have truly understood the magnitude of what I experienced as a kid. And it really took my sister, who was way more intuitive than I was, and like telling me for years and years, like, Toni, this is what happened to us. And I'm like, no, we were just bad kids. Like, and she would tell me, like, Toni, we were too scared to do anything bad. Like, we were not bad kids. And she said that, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, you're right. Like, we were known as the goody two-shoes kids. Like, we never did anything wrong. Like, I never drank in high school. I didn't have sex. I didn't cuss. Like, I didn't do any of the things. And I'm like, and I obeyed my parents, one, because the Bible says to obey your parents, but two, because I was too afraid of what would happen if I didn't. So having my parents or my dad really say like, oh yeah, well, I did this because you were bad. I'm like, no, you were the bad one. Like, you were the one that took the control you had. And my dad was a very large, like, I was a very, very petite, like, graduated high school, 105 pounds, like, very petite kid. And my dad was like, he's 6'2", I think, and probably 350 pounds. And like, you're taking your size and your power and like dominating us. And that is not fair. That is not good. That is not loving. And even if I was a bad kid, there are different ways to discipline.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like we said before, it doesn't even sound like you were, but he was able to convince you of that story, so much so that you told yourself that story of, I was a bad kid, up until the last 5 years, which, I mean, what was it even that he was mad about? Do you know?
I mean, literally everything, all the time.
Yeah. Wow. It looks like
it would be like he would ask a question, and in typical teenage fashion, I'd be like, I don't know, and kind of roll my eyes and have a slight attitude. And it was like, bam, something would set him off, and then he would charge and then, do the things he did. Or it would be like, I would argue with my sister, siblings argue, and then we would get punished. Or it was just like the smallest things that he would take and blow wildly out of proportion, and then say we were being bad, we were being disobedient, we were dishonoring God. And my parents loved to use the Bible for their justification. Or really my dad, my mom wasn't abusive. My dad would use the Bible as justification for why he was doing the things he did, while saying, it's also because you're a bad kid.
And if you look for specific verses, it can be easy for him to try to justify and cherry pick something that fits his narrative of, this is why I have to do this to you. And actually, this is loving of me to do this to you because you need this to grow. And
all the time. So one of his big things, I don't really remember much from when I was younger, but I remember, and this happened until I moved out at 18. If he would spank us, like, he would always either use the belt, or he would tell us, you need to go outside. We lived like in a house literally in the middle of the woods. We had no neighbors. Like, we were all by ourselves. So we would have to go outside and get a switch from a tree. And the longer you live in that, the more you learn like what hurts more and what hurts less. But you're also still, like, your mind is still developing, so you don't always think like 3 steps ahead. So I would remember going outside when it was like, you're going to go outside and get a hickory switch, and that's what I'm using. I would go outside and get a thick one because the thick ones hurt less, and because they don't like move as much through the air. So I'd go outside, like, break a thicker one off the tree, come back inside and give it to him. It's like we had to choose our own weapon. Like, it was so awful. And then he would say, you are being defiant right now. You know that this one's going to hurt you less. You go back outside and get a thin one, and now you're getting hit twice as much. So it was like I was getting the consequence because I did the whatever I did, but then I was getting a second consequence because I was being disobedient by going and getting like a thicker switch. And so, and I never learned from that. I did I did it all the time. I don't know. I think like in my mind, I was like, eventually this has to stop. And it never did until I chose to leave at 18. And yeah.
That's so abusive. It's evil.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's
it really
just
is.
absolutely horrific. No, it's evil. It's wild to me that he can, I mean, say 10 years ago when you guys spoke about it, he can truly think that he didn't do anything wrong. That is not normal. And to punish you for picking the wrong size weapon, that is crazy. Wow. I am so glad that you escaped from that. Did you know that you were going to try to get out the second that you turned 18?
I didn't. So when I was a senior in high school, probably junior, senior in high school, I started applying to college. I was the first person in my family to ever graduate high school, like both sides of my family. Wow. And so I knew that like I was gonna graduate high school and then I'm gonna go to college. So I was looking at all these colleges I wanted to go to. I knew that I wanted to move far away because far enough away that I could live on campus and not at home. And part of that was because I wanted to experience freedom. Like my parents were very strict, and I wasn't ever allowed to do anything. And so I wanted to move so that I could like figure out what it was like to know who I am and actually make friends and, you know, do the things that a typical 18-year-old like wants and needs to do. And so I was contemplating between going to school or taking a gap year, but we were poor and I didn't have any money, so I couldn't take a gap year. So I decided to go off to school. I went to school about an hour away, and so that's when I moved out. There were things that happened in college that eventually led to me being kicked out of school. I went from having zero freedom to way too much freedom and made some dumb choices and got kicked out. So I was like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? So I ended up moving back to my hometown, but moving in with a friend who, and for all intents and purposes, is the exact opposite of everything I stood for. Like I went to college, kind of went crazy, but was still like involved in campus outreach, which is like a Christian, you know, campus college group. I was still involved in that, but I was making all these bad decisions because I had all this freedom and really just experimenting. So when I got kicked out, I moved in with my friend, which my parents were super unhappy about because this is like my one friend they didn't like because she was, in their opinion, a bad influence on me. So I stayed as far away from my family as I could. But my sister, who's 2.5 years younger than me, was still living with my family because she's younger. And so, you know, I tried to be with her as much as possible, because I knew, and I was still very much like, I was a bad kid, so we were being punished. I was not in the mindset yet of like, we were being abused. But I also knew that once I moved out, all of my dad's anger, he only now had it channeled to my sister instead of to both of us. And so I knew like that she was enduring way more than I did when I lived there. And so I tried to get her out as much as possible. But yeah, I never moved back to my parents' house after that.
Oh, that's so hard. It's hard when you have younger siblings, I'm sure,
yeah,
who are going through that and you know that it's happening.
Right.
But you feel like there's not much you can do. And since you also didn't realize at the time that it was abuse, you just knew that it was a bad situation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened when you moved in with your friend?
I lived with her for probably a year. Yeah, and it was normal. Like I got a job, or I went back to the job I had when I was in high school. I went back and forth between there, and then so I was kicked out of school, but then I was let back in on like a probation basis, like the following semester. So then I was going back and forth to classes there, working my job. at a conference center as a waitress, and just kind of living life, trying to save money, figuring out what do I want to do next with my life. Like, I knew that I wanted to go back to school at some point, or that I wanted to like actually earn a degree, and I wanted to be a teacher. And so, but I couldn't decide if I wanted to do that then, if I wanted to kind of figure out how I can go live out in the real world for a while. I didn't know. So I lived with her for about a year. All of this while, I was dating a different guy. My high school boyfriend and I broke up actually while I was at college. We dated for almost 4 years, and then my first semester of college, we broke up because we couldn't handle the distance. It was an hour, but we couldn't handle it, so we broke up. I started dating this guy who I had actually gone on a mission trip to Russia with. So Awana, kind of backtracking a little bit, Awana, that program I was part of, they used to have this program called MIT, or Missionary in Training. And I knew pretty early on that I wanted to travel the world, be a missionary, go tell everybody about Jesus. And so when I found out that Awana had this program, we could actually go on mission trips. I was like, I'm all about this. I'm doing it. So in between my junior and senior year, I went to Russia for a month on a mission trip. There were like 10 of us on this team. It was honestly like an amazing experience, and it wasn't like door-to-door evangelism. Like, we actually went to schools and helped, like, we taught English classes. I mean, as 17-year-olds, like, we're not super helpful, but, I felt like, looking back at all the missions I have been on, I feel like that was probably one of the ones where we probably actually did some good, and not just, like, going there, doing our thing, and then leaving abruptly and, like, ruining their lives. Well, there was this guy on that trip, and when I got kicked out of college, we reconnected. We dated for a year. We actually got engaged. And so we were doing all these, we were planning a wedding. I was living with my friend. I was taking these college classes. And then he decided he was going to move to Wisconsin. And I was in North Carolina. He was in Georgia. So we were long distance. He was going to move to Wisconsin and go to this Bible school. So he ended up doing that. Long story short, we broke up because we couldn't handle the distance. And ironically, about a year later, a little less than a year later, he left that school, and I ended up going to that school.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So
I bet at the time you were like, wow, this timing is just rough.
It was hard. Part of it was because I wanted to, like, go to the place that I felt like this is a reason why we broke up. I need to go and see, what this is all about. But I was also in a season of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I really wanted to, have a deeper relationship with God, and I didn't feel like I could do that living with my friend and then attending the church where I grew up. And so I was like, I want to get away. I want to move as far away as I can. And that was where I could go with the money I had. And they accepted me. So in 2007, I have to really think about this now. Yeah, 2007, I was 20. I moved to Wisconsin. Like, literally, I had no car. I had no real money other than what I needed for the school. I had no job because I had to quit my job to go. And I was like, I'm moving to Wisconsin. I hate the cold with every ounce of my being, and I chose to move to one of the coldest places in the country. I don't know. And ironically, I still live in the north, so I guess it was not so bad, but
yeah, I was going to say, was it brutal? Because I lived in Pennsylvania, and having to shovel snow off of my car in the morning was such a wake-up call from living in Texas.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot believe that people do this every day.
Right.
And that they have to deal with this for like half of the year. This is crazy.
Literally half the year. Like, I remember when I was a kid, if they would even call for snow, like, they would cancel school. And then here I am living in, like, middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and there's literally 2 feet of snow. Like, it snowed 2 feet last night, and buses are picking up kids. And I'm just like,
crazy.
What is this madness? Yeah, so I moved to Wisconsin, went to this Bible school, which is actually where I met my husband. And it it was like a breath of fresh air going from my home church to this, because I didn't feel, I mean, they still had roles, you know, like, because it's still a Christian school, but it was very, very small. And I didn't feel like pressure to perform necessarily. Like, it was kind of like, you're going to come as you are, and we're going to help you grow in your relationship with the Lord. And that's what we want from you. Like, everybody sins, everybody does this, everybody does this. Like, we're all in process. Just come and learn and grow. And so that's what it was. It was literally, it was like a year of Bible classes. We worked at a camp that was affiliated with the school. Like, so we were all on staff. We were unpaid. But it was like part of our tuition or agreement with the school is that we would be on staff with the camp, which is actually such a good experience that I stayed on for an additional year, working with one of the camp directors. I was like his assistant. Yeah, it was a good year. And it was during that year that I started questioning some of the things I had grown up being taught, just more so of the like salvation and eternal security. And if that's the case, how can I lose my salvation if I do X, Y, and Z? And it was nice because it was a place where I was allowed to ask questions. Like, I wasn't allowed to ask growing up. It was growing up, if I asked questions, it was like, what do you just not believe what we tell you? It was like I was just supposed to blindly believe whatever the preacher told us. And it wasn't like that at the Bible school, which I was appreciative of because I felt like I could actually learn something then.
Yeah. What denomination was it? And also, was it an accredited school, or was it more so like a ministry school, kind of like Bethel?
It was not accredited. There are some Christian schools who take the credits, but like I think maybe be 15 schools in the entire country would take the credits from there. And it was, denomination, I don't really know, actually. Maybe I would consider non-denominational.
A lot of places are. That's kind of where I was raised, is just that whole sector.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine that would feel very freeing coming out of the strict environment that you were in. So were they fine with dancing and instruments and all of that at this place?
Yeah, we had worship a couple times a week. My now husband played guitar for it. He sang. They had drums. I don't really recall a lot of dancing, but I don't recall being told we weren't allowed to dance. It just wasn't really that environment where we're gonna go, I don't know, have a dance party or anything. But it was like the worship part of it was kind of freeing. I mean, we were all, so like there were a couple of 18-year-old, like there were, when I say small, like there were 20 of us, like tiny. It was like a class, like literally just like I have 20 students in my class. Like it's small. So we range from like 18 to I think 25 that year was the oldest. And so we were young, like we were babies. And we all came from like all walks of life, you know, financial backgrounds, religious backgrounds. Most of the students there were like pretty local within a couple hours. And then I came up from North Carolina, and there was one other guy who came from Arizona. But yeah, everybody was pretty northern. It was like culture shock. I don't have it now, which kind of makes me sad, but I had a very thick Southern accent. So when I went up there, people were like, what are you saying? Like they couldn't, I don't know if they were, it's just like poking fun, or if it was legitimately, they couldn't understand me. But yeah, it was like the running joke that year, that people couldn't understand, and like always mocking my accent and whatever. And I was like, you know that y'all have the accents too. Like I can't, like milk and milk. What are we doing? Like I don't understand what you're saying either. But
yeah, you don't notice it until you go to another place. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. Yeah. So at the time, were you feeling like you wanted to do ministry full time, or were you still thinking maybe eventually I'll go to school and be a teacher?
Yeah, so it was kind of both. Like my like ultimate dream was I'm going to go be a teacher, and then I'm going to teach overseas. So I was like, being a teacher was I had no plan B. So that was still kind of in my head. But then as I got older, I was like, well, I'm going to tie this into mission work. And so, my whole thing was, I'm going to finish this year. Oh, and then now I'm going to stay for this extra year and work. And then I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get my teaching degree, and I'm going to go teach overseas somewhere. And I didn't know where I wanted to go. I just knew that I wanted to be outside of the United States. But at the end of my student year there, like in between student year and like the year that I worked with the camp director, my now husband and I started dating. And so that kind of like changed the trajectory of my plans, because he left because it was just a 1-year program. And so he left, transferred to a different school that did accept the credits. So he moved to Wisconsin. We were in Wisconsin. He moved to Minnesota to go to a Christian college that accepted the credits, and he was out there in school. So I kind of like was still very much in the purity culture mindset. You date to get married. And so if I'm dating this guy, it's because we're going to get married one day. And so I kind of like changed my whole idea of what I wanted to fit into one day marrying him. And I mean, we're married. It's worked out great, but so like everything I did from then on out, like life plans, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it around what he's doing with his life. And he was going to school for youth ministry. Like he wanted to be a worship pastor and a youth pastor. And so that's what he was in school for. So then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to teach overseas, then how can we tie his passions in with mine? And so it was just, oh my gosh. Yeah. Just constantly figuring out how we're going to do that while still doing what I wanted to do.
Definitely.
It was a lot
you have
of
like
work.
2 different dreams, and you have to try to figure out how to put them together. I know at Bethel, that was a huge thing, ideally you wanted to marry somebody who was also in the same denomination or sector as you. So when you're dating, you're kind of like, what are you called to? What do you want to do for the rest of your life? And you're trying to figure out if your callings are compatible and what it would really look like.
Right.
For sure. So how did you guys end up hearing about the World Race?
Yeah, so we got married, and I ended up moving to Minnesota. We got married. My husband graduated college. He's looking for jobs while just working some random job. In 2010, when the Haiti earthquake happened, I ended up going on 2 mission trips to Haiti. One of them was like right after the earthquake. And it was really just to go and like love on displaced families. And so we went, cooked meals for people. Like we brought a ton of clothing and shoes and supplies down with us, really just loving on the people. And then a year later, my sister and I went down to Haiti again to work at an orphanage that was housing kids who had lost their parents in the earthquake. And so we were there, and that was in the summer of 2011. We got back from Haiti, and about a month later, the like leader of the orphanage messaged me on Facebook, and she was like, hey, we finally got all of your pictures posted on Facebook if you want to come see them. And I was like, oh, great, finally. So I went onto their Facebook page, and I was looking through the pictures, and then I was reading some comments that, like, when people used to post on each other's profiles all the time. So there was this girl who had posted on the orphanage Facebook page saying, like, we just had the most amazing experience month of our lives. I'm so glad that the World Race came here, because Haiti was one of the countries, or I guess still is one of the countries. And I was like, oh my gosh, the World Race, what in the world? That sounds awesome. So I Googled the World Race. I mean, you're traveling, like world and race, like it just sounds amazing. So I Googled it.
That's a powerhouse name.
It really is, truly. So I Googled it, and obviously the World Race came up, and I was reading all of this information, and on their website, so this was in 2011, so I'm sure things are drastically different now, but on their website, they had all these pictures, people traveling the world and serving in ministry and, all the things. But it was like this amazing description of how you can travel the world in 11 months and like you can go change the world. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is us. This is me. My husband was like, very much in, I'm looking for a youth ministry job. This is what we're doing, whatever. So I find this and instantly I'm like, this is what we're going to do. Like, oh my gosh, like this is what God is calling us to. It's not accident that I found this. So I remember we're sitting in our office in our apartment. I walk into with my computer, I walk into the living room and I'm like, Jeremy, I know what God is calling us to do. And he was like, oh yeah, what? And so I told him and he literally laughed. And I was like, what? No, this is what we're doing.
How
and he's
dare
like,
you?
Yeah. He's like, Toni, that is unbelievably unrealistic. I was a full-time nanny at the time. And my husband had, like I said, had just graduated college. And he's like, we don't have money. Like I'm looking for a job. We are not doing this. And this was like maybe end of July, beginning of August in 2011. So I'm like, oh no, I'm going to convince him like this is what we're doing. So for a month,
that's how I am. I'd be like, no, you just don't get the vision yet.
Right.
Oh, sorry. That went on. But there, yeah. No, you just don't get the vision. This is what God wants us to do.
Yes. Like God just hasn't told you yet, but like he told me this is what we're doing. So for a month, because I am like relentless when I want something, I cannot let it go. So for a month, I am like pestering this poor man, like, come on. And he's like, I'll pray about it. I'll pray about it. Just like, leave me alone. If this is what we're supposed to do, like God will tell me. And I'm like, okay, okay. And I'm like, so then I let off a little bit. And then Labor Day weekend that year. So while all this is going on, my parents, who had at that point been married for, 22, 23 years, separated, like completely out of the blue, separated. Found out later that it was because my dad was having an affair. And
wow.
Yeah. So Labor Day weekend, I was like, we're going to go to North Carolina and we are going to convince my dad to get back together with my mom and to leave his woman. And like, we're going to fix their marriage. And so we drive down. It's like a 19-hour drive. We drove straight through, spent the week, couple of days there, whatever, tried to fix my parents' marriage. On the way home, we're driving through the night because, like I said, it's 19 hours. And I'm sleeping in the back seat. My husband is driving. And I remember sitting up, like I had this weird dream and it woke me up and I sat up and my husband was like, hey, Toni, I just want you to let you know, like God told me that we can do this. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And like laid down and went back to sleep. And then a couple hours later, I stood up and I was like, hold on a second. Did you say that we're going to do the world race? And he's like, yeah, I feel peace from God. So then I was like, oh my gosh, we get to do this. So then we have to apply. There's a whole interview process. Obviously, because we're married, it's a little bit different because it's geared toward like single people, like 21 to 35, I think is the age range, or 21 to 35. So we have to apply. There's like a whole like insane interview process that we go through that was like a month long because we were married.
I actually went through it.
Oh, you did?
I forgot to mention that. I applied. Okay. Yes,
okay.
I had applied and I said, okay, I'm going to commit and I'm going to do it if I don't meet somebody. So I think I was actually in the application emailing back and forth process. But yeah, it's a deep dive, to really get accepted into it.
Yeah. And so they did, we both had to submit an application. Like it couldn't have just been a joint one. So we both submitted an application and then they interviewed my husband separately from me. And then they interviewed us together. And obviously the together was like, okay, you guys are going to be in a very unique situation being married. We don't often have married people who go on the race. So like, how do you think this is going to impact your marriage? Blah, 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 whatever. One of the other stipulations is that you had to be married for at least a year in order to go. And we had just celebrated our 2nd anniversary, so we met that criteria. But we're still like babies in marriage too. Yeah. And so we finally get accepted after like a month of interviews and whatever. So we get accepted. We tell our families, and everybody's immediately like, absolutely not. That is the dumbest thing you could possibly do. And really honestly, that should have been it for us. But I have the opinion like, well, when God calls you to something, it's not always logical, and people won't understand the calling that God has on people's lives. And so got accepted, started telling people, and that was in like end of September, beginning of October in 2011. And we had been accepted to the July 2012 like launch. And so then we were like, we have to fundraise. Like, this isn't, like we don't have money. Then it was $15,500 per person. So we had to raise $31,000. Wow. So,
and does that cover everything? So all of your food? No?
So it covers all the travel expenses, all the lodging expenses, all of the food, most of the food. But it did not cover any, like your travel insurance and health insurance for the year. It did not cover any of the immunizations. It did not cover any of the gear. And then it did not cover the travel. So we had a week of training that we were required to participate in. It did not cover the travel back and forth to training, and it did not cover the travel to where we launched from. So out of pocket, in addition to this $31,000 we had to raise, we probably spent like $5,000. So it was, like back then, that was like literally what we were making in a year. Like, so it was like a ridiculous amount. It is far more expensive now.
I'm sure.
So we jumped in like, okay, you have your pool of people. I have my pool of people. We were sending out, typical, you've been on mission trips, yes. We did the support letters. We went to churches. We lived in a pretty wealthy city in Minnesota. And so we were going to businesses, absolutely anywhere, like literally walking into businesses and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Would you support us financially? Like, that is so, I cannot even imagine. So,
but they teach you that that's normal and okay.
Yes,
I remember at Bethel, one thing they would always say is you should never feel bad about asking for money, because you're asking people to sow into what God is going to do. And you should never feel ashamed about that. So you had a lot of students get really ballsy and be like, can you pay for my rent this month? Pay for me to do this, and it was a lot. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we also attended a pretty large church, and my husband was an intern with the youth pastor. So the church was huge, and it was very wealthy because of a lot of the people who went to the church worked at Mayo Clinic. And so we got a lot of support from the church. The people who actually supported us, we had a lot of people in the church tell us like it just didn't feel right. And we were like, again, you don't understand God's calling. We also, there is this organization called Threads of Hope. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Mm-hmm. So it's based out of the Philippines. And basically what they do is they rescue women out of human trafficking, and they give them jobs. And so their jobs were, they made these like thread bracelets, and then they would like send them to people all over the world. And then like you would sell the bracelets, and then the profits would go back to the women. So somehow we got connected with them, and they sent us like 3,000 bracelets that they just trusted we were going to sell and then give them the money. Like, we didn't pay for them up front. So they sent us like 3,000 or so bracelets. And the whole idea was, I think, and like we could determine how much the bracelets cost. They asked that we sell them for at least $2 and not more than $5. And like there were different patterns and colors and threads and all of that. So I think we settled on either $3 or $4 per bracelet that we were going to sell. And then, so if it was $4, $2 of the dollars would go back to this organization and we would get to keep $2. So we enlisted our youth group. Like, you guys are in middle school and high school. Those were like really cool back then. And so we were like, everybody, we sold these in like a week. Actually, our youth group did.
Oh my gosh.
We made crazy. So much money from that. And then like, obviously we were able to give money back to this organization. We had a couple of garage sales. Obviously the support letters. We did a matching thing. So my husband is like phenomenal at money saving. And so we had, even though we didn't have a lot of money because we were young, like we had a pretty decent savings. And so there was one month where we told our supporters, we will match every dollar we get during this month up to $3,000. And so during that month, we actually ended up getting like $4,500, and then we matched $3,000 of that. So we did that. That was like basically a full-time job from when we found out until we left. And like I said, I was still working full-time as a nanny. My husband had 2 jobs because we were trying to not only like buy all the things we needed for the trip, but we also still needed to, live for the like 9 months that we were preparing. And we were trying to save money for while we were on the trip for things we wanted to do that were outside of the support we raised. So we never saw each other. It was like 9 months of like, in the morning, hey, at night, good night. Like, we hardly saw each other because we were support raising. We traveled to different churches. Like, our job was, how much money can we raise before we leave? So then May of 2012 rolls around, and we have to travel to Georgia. So the organization we went with is based in Georgia, just north of Atlanta. We had to travel to Georgia for a week of training camp. And honestly, Jubilee, if I hadn't registered back when people were telling us that it didn't feel right, that we shouldn't have gone, training camp should have been my red flag. Like 100% it should have. So we get to training camp, and the whole idea of training camp is they basically want to give you as close to an experiences at training camp as you could get on the world race. And so they put you in all of like the worst situations to see how adaptable you are, to test your attitude, like all of that, your spiritual wellness. And so we get to training camp. So they called them squads. So it was our squad, which at training camp had about 60 people, and then 2 other squads. So there were like close to 200 of us who were about to go into the world, plus the people who worked on staff at this organization. So probably 250 of us at this camp. We brought our packs, so like our 50-pound packs with like everything we're gonna take with us for the year, tent, sleeping bags, clothes, like everything. And they're like, okay, we're gonna camp out for the week. So set up our tents, we're doing all the things. And it was a week of, what you would imagine, lots of worship. There were, like we had days where they would have like cultural days, or I guess meals. And so it was like, okay, for lunch today, we're in Asia. And so we're going to pick out, this table's in Vietnam, and this table's in China, and this table's in India. And you're going to have food and experiences based on like that country. And, which in a lot of ways was cool, because my palate was not very broad then. Mm-hmm. Now I'll eat pretty much anything, but then I was like, no, I was pretty picky, so that was hard. I remember we were at the China table, and they were like, okay, so you're gonna pretend that you're in this like rural village in China, and it's poor, and you get a bowl of rice and fish head soup. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And it was literally like this styrofoam cup with this like thick, goopy soup is what they called it, with fish heads in it, literal fish heads. And we had to eat it. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I'll eat the rice. Great. I'm like, but there's no way. And they were like, okay, but you have to. Like, it's a requirement because we're acting as if you're in this village. And if you don't eat this food, you are going to offend the people. And then they will never hear you preach. Like, they will not listen to anything you have to say. And so we're going to do this. So I'm eating the soup, and I somehow down it and then immediately throw up. And I'm not going to survive. I can't go. Like, I can't do this. I can't, whatever.
I had a similar experience when we were in Thailand. The food was good. Well, there were a couple things that I didn't love, but I ate it. It was fine. But they gave us a talk, and they said, we're going to go to this place and we're going to go knock on doors. And when they invite us into their house, we're going to go in, and it's customary for them to feed you. So they're going to try to give you food when you go in their house, and you have to eat all of it. So we went to 10 different houses, and I ate 10 meals in a row. I thought I was going to throw up. And it's so funny because I have this, I need to make a post about it, but I have this picture of me like performatively praying over a house, of me. But my stomach is like so bloated in this picture because I had just eaten so much food. But yeah, that is something they tell you. I mean, and I get it, like being culturally sensitive to whatever they give you. But yeah, that's crazy that they had you eat that during training camp.
It was rough. I mean, there were days or meals where it was like pretty typical, standard, like rice and beans, or like most of the countries go to India. So it's like rice and curry and naan, and like Indian food is my favorite. So I was all about that. So yeah, I mean, just your typical, like, these are the experiences we're going to have with food, because you're going to go places and you're not going to eat American food. So you need to really expand your horizons. Okay, I get that. Great. And then they had us, they were like, well, now, like, they had us training for like travel scenarios and sleeping scenarios, because you're not always going to be in your nice comfy bed in a bedroom in an apartment. Like, you're going to be sleeping anywhere and everywhere. So I remember one night they brought in like a school bus, like a yellow school bus. There were 60 of us on our squad. Okay. They had us get onto, all 60 of us. School buses usually fit, 50 people, maybe 55 if you cram them in there. They had all 60 of us get on this school bus with all of our stuff. And we had to sleep on the bus the whole night. And nobody slept. I mean, we had people like hanging hammocks from like the emergency exits. We had people trying to climb on top of the roof to sleep, and like we weren't allowed to do that. So like the scenario was, you guys are traveling from, I don't know, Kenya to Tanzania, and the border closes at midnight, and you don't get to the border in time, and you can't cross the border because it doesn't open again till 8 a.m., but it's not safe to like set up tents outside the bus, so you all have to stay on the bus. And they were like, we're going to do this because this has actually happened before. And we're like, oh crap. So nobody slept, obviously. Like, it was the absolute worst night of my life. I have a child who didn't sleep, like, worst night of my life.
That's crazy.
That was the worst sleeping experience. Luckily, like, even from the whole race, like, that was the worst thing. And then they had us doing all these exercises. So I was actually just talking to one of my old teammates, who I was asking, like, I can't remember a lot from training camp. Like, tell me something we did, like, as I'm preparing for this. And he was telling me how there was one day where they separated the men from the women, because in a lot of countries, like, men are going to do ministry and then women are going to do ministry. So they had us, like, the women, we had to take all of our stuff. And luckily my husband is the one that carried the tent the whole year. So like, I didn't have that on my pack. Yeah. So grateful for that. But they had us put all of our stuff in our pack, like all 50 pounds, whatever. And then we had to hike like 5 miles. And we were in Georgia in the mountains. And so we had to hike 5 miles. And they were like, sometimes you're going to have to take all of your stuff and hike to villages. And it was, I'm a hiker. I mean, not as much then, but I was still pretty fit and active. And like, it was brutal. And then while we were doing that, the men, because the camp was on a lake, the men had to, they had these logs, and they had to get in the water and swim with these logs to an island. And the whole idea was, well, what if you're in a village that starts flooding and you need to help moms carry their babies across flooding rivers?
Wow.
I don't know if that had ever happened, but they did that.
Yeah, they're thinking of every worst case scenario.
Everyone. Yeah. And then at night is like, so the first or second day we were there, they put us, so like we had a squad of 60 people, and then they broke those 60 people into teams of like 7 or 8. And that was like the team that you would go in the countries and do ministry with. And so they broke us into our team like the first or second day. And so like throughout the week, you're getting to know your team. And obviously my husband and I are on a team and then we're with like, I think there were 4 other people. I'm pretty sure there were 6 of us on our team to begin with. So like we would go out and do things during the day, like in the morning, and then we come back in the afternoon and do all of the swimming with logs, pretending they're babies and whatever. And then at night we would have our worship services. So I grew up in a very conservative Southern Baptist church. I did not know about tongues or healings or prophecy. Like I had heard about those things, like we read 1 Corinthians, and so like, but I was taught that those things stopped in Bible times. And so, and like in all of the excitement of preparing for the world race, I didn't do research on like what they believed. I just knew that they love Jesus, they want to go spread the gospel, I want to be a part of that. So at night we had these worship services, and it was all the things you could imagine, like the tongues, the prophecy, and I'm sitting here like, what is this stuff? I was terrified because I had no idea. Like people are coming up behind me, laying their hands on my head and speaking in tongues, and I'm like, literally like these complete. And I'm like,
I believe it. There's no personal space in the charismatic circle.
Oh my gosh.
It's jarring. Yeah. For people who haven't experienced it, and I can only imagine going into that thinking, oh, this is just a missions organization, and not thinking that it's going to be that. Right. And then feeling like, okay, we've already raised all of this money.
Yep.
And I guess we're doing it.
Yep. Yeah.
What was the craziest part to you out of all the charismatic stuff?
So it was actually one of your earlier podcasts. I was listening to somebody say, or maybe it was actually even you, but how they went to a country and like they healed somebody, but the person just said they were healed, so people would stop praying for them. Yes. So we had an experience like that at training camp. So there was this guy on a different squad from us who was completely deaf, or mostly deaf, but he had hearing aids so he could hear, or like cochlear implants. Yeah. But they were like, we're going to pray for healing for him. Like his hearing is going to be restored. And he was not, like, he was of the mindset that like, this is not a burden for me. Like, I don't think there's something wrong with me. I don't consider it a disability. This is just, it is my life and I'm okay with that. But they made him go to the front, only 250 people. They made him go to the front and pray and pray and pray. And I'm sitting here and like people are surrounding him. And then my husband and I are sitting, I don't know, 5 or 6 rows back. And I mean, it's like tongues. And I mean, for 20, 30 minutes. And then somebody's like, well, are you healed? No, he's not. So they continue praying. And it was like 2 hours of worship going on. And most of us sitting kind of like in the congregation, and then hit this poor guy up here. And I remember at one point he got up. And like, again, he had cochlear implants, so he could hear, but like if he, took it, like it took it off. Yeah. So somebody went over and literally took it off and was like, can you hear us? And he's deaf, so he can read lips. So he said, yes. And of course then, oh my gosh, God healed him, da da da. And so then he walks back, and the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like, what I don't understand what's going on. Like, I'm just so scared. I don't know what other word.
Yeah.
So he walks back and my husband is sitting at the end. And I remember him grabbing the guy's arm and he's like, dude, can you really hear? And he kind of just shrugged his shoulders and kept walking. And I remember looking at my husband thinking, I think he's pretending. Like, yeah. I don't, but I was also trying to be open-minded because, again, I just wanted to do whatever God was, like, preparing us to do. But that was when I was really like, I'm not really sure. But, like you said, at that point, we had raised probably like $25,000 of the money we needed. So I'm like, once you give it to the organization, if you decide not to go, you don't get that money back. Like, they keep it.
A lot of missions organizations are like that. Yeah. They
so
keep
we were
it
like,
either way.
So we were like, we have to go. We can't waste this $25,000 that we can't let down all these people who have given us money. Also, the money that we personally have invested into all of this. So that was end of May. We had about a month between that and when we actually left for the trip. So we go home. We had our last week or two of our jobs, and then we were going to spend that last month in the States seeing friends and family before we left. So that's what we did. It was pretty uneventful, whatever. So we go to launch, which is in Washington, D.C., and launch was 3 or 4 days of pretty much the same thing, lots of worship services, lots of team building, kind of preparing us for, okay, guys, we went to India first. And so kind of preparing us for we're in the States, you guys are about to go to India, and it is going to be culture shock. So let's really hone in on how we can prepare you for the culture shock you will absolutely experience. So it was mostly uneventful. I don't really remember feeling oh my gosh, what the hell are we getting ourselves into? Other than just some fear of we're about to leave the only life we've ever known and go be in unfamiliar places for a whole year. So yeah, we go to India, and then it was literally, so I have these journals. So these are the ones I journaled like a fiend back in the day. And so these are the journals I kept while we were on the world race. So I was reading through these because I haven't picked them up in at least 10 years. And I was reading through these. And so we launched meaning we left Washington, D.C. to fly to India. So we launched July 6th. We landed because of time change and travel and all that. July 8th, we actually get to our ministry site the evening of July 8th. And literally within 3 days, I'm reading in my journal, I'm already writing, I don't think we were supposed to do this.
No way.
3 days in. But again, I'm we raised this money, now we're here. So if we choose to leave, it's on our own dime. We don't have the $3,000 it would cost to fly home. There's no way we can do that. So yeah, literally 3 days in, I'm I'm writing in my journal. I'm already having doubts. I don't know if this is actually what we were supposed to do. But then I remember also feeling guilty because it wasn't just me, it was my husband too. And he felt confident. And I was well, I can't doubt what my husband feels he felt from God. So maybe it's just my own insecurity.
So at that point, was he still feeling confident, and were you sharing any of those inner fears with him, or were you kind of keeping them to yourself?
I kept it to myself, largely because I knew how hard it was for him. Even after he felt confident that this is what God was calling us to, it was still very hard for him because he lived a very comfortable life. He had an awesome childhood. He never struggled, his family never struggled financially. He had always been comfortable. And he had been to Mexico to all-inclusive resorts. He had never been out of the country other than that. He had never really experienced discomfort. And so for him to agree to a year of discomfort was a huge deal. And I knew that. And so I was I'm not about to tell this man that I'm doubting that we should have ever gone on this trip.
Especially when you were the one who tried to convince him for so long that I'm so certain. Yeah.
Yes.
One question I have, maybe you'll get into it more later, but what was it like as far as y'all being able to, I don't know, like talk in private? So if you're in these tents, say you were having doubts and say you did want to talk to him, would you feel like you needed to whisper, or did you feel like you had privacy to just talk as a married couple? Because I feel like for me, I can actually be quite introverted, and to be around that many people all the time, I feel like I would constantly think we need time to like decompress, the two of us, and talk real talk about how we think it's going.
So one of the things I appreciated about the world race as a whole was that they told us from the very, very beginning, you guys are going to have time to prioritize your marriage. And so in every country, they told us, like, we want to encourage you, one, to still have regular date nights, and two, to try to get away, like, actually away from your team for at least one night a month. Like, go get a hotel or a hostel or whatever. So obviously, that's all on our own dime. And so that was part of that, like, working constantly before we left, because we were saving money to be able to do stuff like that. So, our team switched throughout the year. Like, we weren't with the same 6 or 7 people the whole year. Like, they would, people would come and go. But I would say, like, probably half the time, the people that, like, my husband and I were with were very supportive of that. Like, okay, you guys, so they really encouraged us, like, in ministry, we were going to have at least one day a week that was completely a rest day. Like, no ministry. You get to do your own thing, sleep in, go to the market, whatever you need to do, like, completely a rest day. We got an extra day every week. So, like, we had our own rest day, and then we got a marriage rest day.
Wow.
Which I really appreciated. And that was like a world race policy. It wasn't necessarily like our squad or our team. So that was one of the things. So we were married on the race, and there was one other married couple on our squad of 60 people. And so they were told the same thing. And so yeah, our first month in India, and marriage time is different every single month, depending on where we were, where we stayed, the ministry we were working with. But so in India, we stayed in 2 different orphanages, and the first, like, 10 days we stayed at a boys' orphanage, and we slept, it was like this, I don't know, 20 by 10 size room, and all of our tents were in it, so we were, like, right next to each other. Obviously, my husband and I got our own tent, but, like, I mean, we were right up next to people. So if we wanted any time to have conversation, like, we had to go for walks. It was like we didn't really have privacy. We painted the orphanage. That's what we did. We painted the orphanage. And then we went to a girls' orphanage. And then in that, those 10 days we stayed. So, like, the downstairs part of the orphanage was like the kitchen, and where the adults and that was a girls' orphanage where the girls slept. And then upstairs, like, they held church services. And so that's where, like, our tents were set up. And so my husband and I, to try to get some privacy, we would actually take our tent to the roof, and, like, it was like our own bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, which was horrible because it was super windy. And so, like, sleep was terrible. We ended up just going back, whatever. So India, and I think this is in one of the things I submitted, that was where, I don't know, maybe a week in, this woman came to the boys' orphanage, like, screaming her head off. And where we were in India, so they speak multiple languages in India, but where we were, they spoke Telugu. And so she comes to the orphanage. We're obviously all white, and we're with these Indian people. And so she comes and she's, like, yelling at us in Telugu. And the pastor is, like, trying to translate. And basically all he's saying is, she's possessed by a demon. She wants you to deliver her from the demon.
We're going to pause here on part 1 of Toni's story, but don't worry, part 2 is already up, so you can go listen to it now. And it would mean the world to me if you guys could please leave a positive review for Healedish. It really helps the show grow. So with all of that being said, I will see you over there for part 2.